Hi, my name is Abigail Meehan, and for my quantitative research assignment, I will be discussing if there is any relationship found between religious importance and thoughts towards suicide. So for my introduction, I'll be discussing my goals of the research and what I hope to find. So one of my goals for the research is finding if there is a statistically significant relationship between religious importance and thoughts towards suicide. For my research, I have 3 variables, and those variables consist of gun ownership, thoughts towards suicide, and religious importance. There were lots of questions regarding each of these variables, but for my study, I wanted to focus on how important religion is to somebody, whether or not they think suicide is okay if someone is just tired of living in no other circumstance, and whether or not the person owns a gun in their household. So with my background in Christianity, I know that suicide is frowned upon, and I see this in other religions as well. If you commit suicide, this is a sin, and you will not be able to glorify in all the promises that they offer you in the afterlife in heaven. So I wanted to see if non-religious people versus religious people have differing opinions towards this matter. My hypothesis is those who rank religion as higher importance are less likely to agree that somebody has the right to end their own life if they are tired of living. So for my data set and variables, I pull my variables from the SPSS data website, and I came up with an independent variable, a dependent variable, and my control variable. My independent variable is religious importance. My dependent variable is thoughts towards suicide, and this is because thoughts towards suicide may depend on how religious one ranks themselves. And then my control variable is gun ownership. I chose this as my control variable because those who own a gun may have differing opinions about killing somebody. I know in Christianity it says thou shalt not kill, so those who own a gun may believe differently. So I chose that as my control variable. And I did have to do some recoding. I had to recode my independent variable and my dependent variable. This is because I needed it to match my hypothesis. So for my independent variable, this is religious importance, and I'm only interested in the people that said religion is of any importance to them. So these are the people that said that it's very important or pretty important, and then the other 2 options were not too important or not at all important. So the ones that said it was of any religious importance, I recoded it as the number 1 because that is what I'm interested in. And if they said it was not of importance, I recoded that as 0. And then for my dependent variable, I'm interested in those who say no to suicide. So if anybody said yes, I recoded that to 0, and I recoded the no's to 1. And then for my control variable, I was able to leave that as is. I did not have to recode it. So all answers that were recoded as 1, that's what I am interested in. Those are going to be beneficial to my hypothesis, and all answers recoded as 0 are not beneficial for my research. So that's why I am not counting it in my research. And then all missing answers or skipped answers, those are left out because that may skew my data, and I want my data to be as accurate as possible, so those are left out and also coded as 0. So for my results, 63.4% of people who are religious tend to believe it is not okay to commit suicide if you're tired of living, and then 12.9% of people who say they are less religious are okay with people committing suicide if they are tired of living. 77.1% of people believe suicide is not okay and own a gun, and 22.9% believe suicide is okay and do not own a gun. So this is my interpretation of the coefficients. I was able to pull up crosstabs, run model summaries, coefficients. So I wanted to kind of explain what all of that data says. So through the model summaries, I was able to pull the R-squared values. And so an R-squared value of 0.07, that is 0.7%. So knowing religion and gun ownership status allows us to know 0.7% variation in thoughts towards suicide. And then as we continue to the other R-squared value that I found of 0.09, this is 0.9%, and it says that knowing religious importance explains 0.9% of variation in owning a gun. I was also able to pull the p-scores, the p-values, my apologies, the p-values for religious importance and suicide opinions, and also religion importance in gun ownership. So for religious importance in suicide, the p-value is 0.00, and this is statistically significant. And then for the p-value of religious importance in gun ownership, the p-value is 0.499, and this is insignificant. And then I also pulled the beta score, and the beta is 0.3. And so this beta score says that religious importance leads to an increase of 0.3 points for negative thoughts towards suicide. So in conclusion, my hypothesis is supported. This is because I did find a statistically significant relationship between religious importance and suicide thoughts. Those who were more religiously